holding his scanning goggles to his face and peering into the darkness. Isaac finds an all-too-familiar but uncomfortable sight. At first, he didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, but upon looking just a little longer, he can notice the walls are moving unnaturally. And then it clicked. Obelisks. Those dark-side crustaceans he faced on Dromund Kaas in the Dark Temple, he had hoped never to encounter them again. But alas, the quest for power can be met with much resistance. Slowly lowering his goggles, he looks to Cyrus and says with a concerned expression,
"You're not going to like this, but do you remember those insects we saw in the Dark Temple back at the Academy days?"
To his surprise, Cyrus looks more gleeful than expected.
Oh, are you talking about those cool-looking bugs that are pretty much immune to anything, even lightsabers?
Taken aback from Cyrus not being cautious or worried, Isaac begins to inform him of the danger that awaits.
Yeah, and if I recall, Lord Profta was the one who managed to save us from those things. I haven't done much research on them as of late, but I have a bad feeling about this.
With his chest puffed up, Cyrus looks more confident than usual and goes on to boast.
Well, Profta was a lord, just like we are now. Surely we can take whatever comes our way. Hell, we even killed a rancor with wings just an hour ago. I'm pretty sure we can handle a few pesky bugs.
Reminded of the sight he saw through the goggles, Isaac shivers at the thought of that large swarm of obelisks pouncing on them all at once. Taking a moment once again to look through the scanner goggles, he notices a few of the ones closer to them are reacting more erratic than the ones further away. The ones closest begin to climb over one another, trembling more viciously, like a vibration that almost looks akin to how Terentatecs bellow right before they gorge themselves on a helpless victim. Although he has a strong sense of danger ahead, his lust for knowledge and power supersedes his instinctual warnings, and he takes one slow step forward. No reaction. The creatures are idle, like if they're held in place by a spell or some sort of set conditions. Seeing as nothing has happened, Cyrus takes the lead and waltzes through with an unbothered attitude, taking brisk strides as if he owned the place. And then stopping short halfway through the corridor, his eyes slightly adjust to the darkness, and he notices all of the hundreds of obelisks lining the walls to either side, and even the ceiling. Coming up from behind, Isaac gives a slight telepathic nudge to let him know he is slowly approaching from his flank. Standing side by side, he looks to Cyrus with a serious and a worried expression that says, "No games or nonsense," and says,
"We'll take it slow. If even one of them looks like they're going to leap at you, bolt for it."
After Isaac whispering that suggestion or a command, Cyrus simply nods in agreement and begins to look again all over the walls as to how these organisms crawl around and are seemingly hungry, waiting for an opportunity, but still puzzled what is keeping them at bay. During this time, the Mirialan pulls out his scanner goggles once more to look ahead and can make out a small stone altar. And resting atop it, he notices an object idling on the stone pillar. Steadily examining it from afar, his heart and mind begin to leap with excitement or just possibly greed. A small, four-sided pyramid, with a combination of stone and red crystalline material making up the structure of the object. Additionally, he can make out certain black markings on it, and due to his studies in Sith language with Nagasado's holocron, he's able to read it. The holocron of Freeden Nad, the once ancient Sith Lord who ruled over Onderon, and its people for more over than 100 years, and creating a dynasty that would last for centuries before being stopped by the Jedi Order. Of course, this all happened more than 400 years ago, but knowing that more secrets are waiting just beyond his reach, the young Mirialan quickens his pace and thrusts his hand forward to clasp the cold pyramid. Not even a second after claiming the holocron, Isaac and Cyrus can hear the entire hallway echo with the sound of hundreds of clicking and clacking mandibles with a thunderous boom following thereafter. the stone altar shattering, and the large swarm of these crustaceans, ranging from sizes as small as a fist to as large as someone's entire chest, coming out of the inky darkness and lunging at the two ambitious Sith Lords who possibly bit off more than they can chew. Both of them horrified at the idea of meeting such a gruesome end, they rush for the door, running with reckless abandon. Trying to dodge most of the ravenous creatures, Isaac utilizes his training in the acrobatic lightsaber form, a Taru. He begins to duck, leap, and sidestep several of the insects, but they are pouring down on him hard, like raindrops in a storm. Similar to the dark side superstorms he endured on the Sith world of Dromund Kaas. Meanwhile, Cyrus is using brute force to swat away several of the crustaceans using his lightsaber, and even using his cybernetic arm to punch, slap, and unexpectedly incapacitating several of the creatures. Unfortunately, however, they are too numerous to count, and two fist-sized ones latch themselves onto his organic left arm, digging their hundreds of sharp teeth into his flesh and injecting some sort of acid directly into his bloodstream. Burning his insides like liquid fire, it takes all his resilience to not drop himself to the floor in pure agony. Almost passing out in a split second, he regains his composure and bolts for the door. Activating the other side of his double-bladed lightsaber, he starts performing a technique, or a dance, from the fifth lightsaber form, Xian. The barrier of blades, cocooning himself by rapidly moving his lightsaber around him, almost creating a protective shield of red light. All the while, Isaac still sprinting towards the door and dodging the swarm of these hungry beasts. He is overwhelmed when a large group of craving mouths are throwing themselves at him all at once. It's impossible, he thought to himself. It's like trying to evade every single grain of sand in a swirling dust storm you'd find on the Sith homeworld of Korriban. Gathering his rage and building his strength in the dark side, he is astonished as to how quickly he gathered his power. Perhaps it is the imminent threat of life and death being all too real, or just the simple fear of being left to die whilst being eaten alive by many famished, dark side insects. He puts up an energy barrier around himself resembling a dark shadow and wards off all the obelisks in a 180-degree angle. Unfortunately, however, he failed to notice an extremely large one creeping above the ceiling, and it ends up dropping directly onto his back. With its mandibles digging into his flesh, he can feel it latching directly onto his spinal column and releasing a potent toxin that makes his entire back feel like it's being put directly over a bed of liquid magma. Almost collapsing from the immense pain, he manages to stay focused, using his training acquired over many hours of dark side meditation to discipline his mind and overcome such adversities. Just a few more steps, he thought. Just a few more, and he can escape this horrid nightmare. Both Cyrus and Isaac can barely make out the exit through the hundreds of obelisks obscuring their vision. In a last-ditch effort, Isaac gathers his strength in the dark side and is surprised as to how much his power is amplified when drawing on the pain he is in caused by the crustaceans pumping him full of toxic chemicals directly into his system. Using both of his hands, he thrusts them outward in front of him and does a strong telekinetic push that he never thought could be possible, blasting all the creatures obstructing the doorway and even pushing to the side hundreds of obelisks to either side. Seizing this opportunity, Cyrus leaps forward 15 feet, twirling his double-bladed lightsaber in front of him like two deadly beams of dark power and knocking aside any of the bugs that meet his path. In the same breath, Isaac musters all his strength and dashes for the exit. Slightly relieved to escape that narrow corridor, they speak too soon when they realize the sound of clicking and clacking mandibles are still encroaching on them. Trying to look for the large stone slab that was acting as a sort of door or ward for the entrance to the hallway that led to Frieden Nad's holocron. They are quickly dismayed upon remembering that the Sith Emperor they had sought assistance from earlier had essentially disintegrated the stone into a million pieces. And now, with a throng of hundreds of hungry insects quickly crawling on the floor and walls in this large chamber, they were catching their breath in. They start sprinting once again, and now making a break for the entrance or exit to this tomb, running for their very lives with no further regard for each other. With much more space to move around now, they manage to make their way outside, but aren't shocked to notice they are still being pursued. Using a series of acrobatic maneuvers, both Cyrus and Isaac get down the long flight of stairs and practically moving in a blur towards the ramp of their waiting ship, quickly pressing on the emergency controls to have the boarding ramp speedily close. Some of the obelisks try to force themselves through the small gaps whilst the ramp is closing, and their shells being so sturdy that even the immense pressure from two large chunks of Dura steel aren't able to break their outer carapace. Isaac using the force to nudge some of the stubborn insects away, and Cyrus using his cybernetic arm to punch with full force against the shell of some of the creatures, and noticing how his mechanical is starting to become dented at the knuckles. Reaching for his comm, Isaac cries out to HK in a panic and commands,
Get us the criff out of here, HK.
Compliant confirmation. Copy that, Master Isaac, punching the ion thruster to full power.
with the inertia dampeners only partially engaged due to all the power going to the engines. Cyrus and Isaac try their best to balance themselves as to not be hitting against the walls of the ship, and with the last of the obelisks removed from trying to wedge themselves through the closing boarding ramp, both Sith Lords breathe a sigh of relief, with Cyrus putting both hands on his knees and trying to keep himself standing with legs shaking. Sitting down on the floor, Isaac does a long, exasperated exhalation and reaches over with one arm to touch his back, and disappointed to still find this large thing still attached to him. He vowed to remove it at the soonest opportunity. In the same instance, Chidari, Isaac's Mandalorian little sister, walks in and asks,
Okay, what exactly did I miss this time?